The marble floor of the Apex Vanguard Corp lobby gleamed like a frozen lake under the chandeliers. Hundreds of employees stream through the security gates. Their morning commuter faces a blur of caffeine dependency and quiet desperation. Harper Locke moved against the current, her heels clicking a frantic rhythm against the polished stone as she grabbed the sleeve of the man in the black trench coat. She yanked. Hard. He didn't move. Harper yanked again, her fingers digging into the expensive wool. "You're late," she hissed, her voice a sharp whisper that cut through the ambient chatter. 45 minutes late. I specifically said 9 a.m. sharp. The gig is 3 hours, tops. 3 hours of standing there and looking constipated while I do all the actual work. The man turned his head slowly, a motion that carried the weight of tectonic plates shifting. His face was all sharp angles and cold indifference, a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes the color of molten amber that looked down at her like she was an interesting insect that had crawled onto his sleeve. Harper didn't notice the eyes. She was too busy shoving a crumpled $20 bill into his chest. The paper crinkled against the black fabric of his shirt. "Lunch money," she said, tapping the bill. "I know the rate we agreed on was $50, but you get the other $30 when we're done. This is the deposit. Don't make me regret hiring you off that sketchy app." Silas looked down at the bill, then at her hand, then back to her face. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in the depths of those amber eyes, a micro-twitch at the corner of his mouth. He reached up with one large hand and plucked the bill from her grip. "Lunch," he repeated, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. "Don't play dumb. You know the deal." Harper grabbed his arm again and started dragging him toward the main security checkpoint. She was 5'4". He was well over 6 feet, a tower of black wool and menace. She hauled him like a stubborn child pulling a reluctant parent through a department store. "Thorne is coming. See him? Over there, by the east elevators. The pale one in the ridiculous Italian suit. That's him. Director Thorne. My boss. The leech." Silas allowed himself to be dragged. It was a conscious decision, one he made with the same detached curiosity he might grant a particularly aggressive kitten. His shoulder brushed against a marble pillar, and a small crack spider-webbed across the surface. Harper didn't notice. "Leech," Silas repeated. "Vampire leech. He's a vampire. Everyone knows. The fangs are obvious. He doesn't even try to hide them anymore." Harper pulled him to a stop behind a massive potted fern. "Okay, here's the plan. You know the plan, right?" "I know the plan," Silas said. He didn't. He had been in the middle of dismantling a corporate espionage ring that had been bleeding his syndicate dry for 6 months. He had been walking toward the executive elevator to confront the head of the finance division. Then, this small, furious creature had appeared and grabbed him. "Good, because this is the only shot I have." Harper's eyes were wide, electric blue, and completely devoid of fear. She stared up at him with the intensity of a general planning a siege. Under Article 47, Section B, Subsection 12 of the Supernatural Labor Code, if a subordinate publicly rejects a romantic advancement from a superior, and that rejection is delivered by their declared mate, the superior loses all termination rights for 90 days. Silas blinked. It was the first time he had blinked in 3 minutes. Romantic advancement. "Thorne has been circling me for months. He's been filing false performance reviews. He's trying to fire me. If I lose this job, I lose my health insurance." Harper's voice cracked on the last word. Insurance. She was worried about insurance. "So I hired you. You're going to walk up to him, in front of everyone, and loudly claim me as your mate. Then you're going to verbally tear him apart for trying to hit on your chosen one. It's a loophole. It's watertight. No one's ever challenged it." Silas looked at the $20 bill in his hand. It was damp from her nervous grip. 3 hours. 2.5 now. The witness statements need to be filed by noon. We have to get at least 5 independent witnesses to sign affidavits. Then you're done. Free lunch. She pointed at the bill. "Which I just gave you. So technically you're already eating on my dime." I see. Silas's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. It was more like a predator contemplating a very amusing trap. And this romantic advancement. Thorn. He has made advances. Gross ones. He tried to kiss me in the supply closet. He said my heartbeat was intoxicating. He's a cliché, honestly. Harper shuddered. But he's a powerful cliché. He's got the board in his pocket. If he fires me, my insurance goes away, my insulin goes away, I go away. Silas's eyes flickered. Insulin. I'm diabetic. Type 1. Don't worry. I know you're just hired muscle. I'm not trauma dumping on you. But that's the math. Job equals insurance. Insurance equals insulin. Insulin equals Harper stays alive. It's simple. She patted his chest. You just have to scare him off for 3 months. By then, I'll have figured something else out. The pat landed with a soft thump against his rock-hard pectoral. Silas looked down at her hand. Then he looked up, scanning the lobby. His gaze passed over the security guards, the frantic employees, the corporate logos plastered on every available surface. And then it landed on Thorn. The vampire was 50 feet away, striding across the lobby with a rolled document in his hand. He was tall and lean, with silver-streaked black hair and skin so pale it glowed under the chandeliers. 4 security guards flanked him, their hands resting on their belts. Thorn's eyes were dark, his expression a mask of bureaucratic malice. There he is, Harper breathed. Ready? Silas looked at the file in Thorn's hand. The termination notice. He could read the header from 50 feet away. Apex, Vanguard Corp. Personnel Action Form. He could smell the ink, the fear, the stale blood that clung to the vampire's skin. Ready, Silas said. Harper grabbed his hand and yanked him out from behind the fern. She wove through the crowd with practiced ease, her grip like iron on his fingers. Silas let her guide him. He was acutely aware of the warmth of her palm against his, the rapid flutter of her pulse in her wrist. She was terrified. And yet, she had just threatened to withhold his lunch money. They intercepted Thorn 10 feet from the security gates. Harper planted herself in front of him, arms crossed, chin raised. The 4 guards immediately closed ranks, but Thorn held up a hand. Harper. His voice was smooth, oil-slick, a deliberate attempt at warmth that landed like a cold draft. I was just coming to see you. Here I am, Harper smiled. It was the kind of smile that promised litigation. Oh, Director Thorn, I'd like you to meet my mate. She shoved Silas forward. The AlphaKing stumbled exactly 0 inches. He simply stepped into the space she had created, his presence suddenly overwhelming the entire lobby. Thorn's gaze flicked up, meeting those golden amber eyes. Something happened. Something that Harper didn't see, because she was too busy narrating the scene in her head, mentally checking boxes on her affidavit list. But Thorn saw it. Thorn, who had lived for 300 years and had faced down werewolf packs, rogue sorcerers, and the IRS, saw the flicker of predatory stillness in Silas's posture. The utter lack of fear. The casual grace of a man who had never once in his life worried about health insurance. Thorn, Silas said. The word was flat, unimpressed. Harper. Thorn's smile wavered. This is unexpected. He's my mate, Harper announced, loudly enough for the nearest gaggle of employees to turn and stare. My one true mate, the wolf of my heart, the apex of my romance. Silas glanced down at her. One eyebrow rose a fraction of an inch. Harper elbowed him in the ribs. Hard. Isn't that right, honey? The elbow bounced off his side like it had struck a brick wall. Silas didn't flinch. He just looked at Thorn with that same detached curiosity. I suppose it is. He's very traditional, Harper added, her voice ringing across the lobby. Very territorial. He gets upset when other men make passes at me, especially his boss. Aren't you territorial, sweetie? Silas's gaze drifted to Thorne's hand, to the termination notice. He reached out, his movements unhurried, and plucked the document from the vampire's grip. Thorne let him. He didn't have a choice. The AlphaKing's presence was a physical weight pressing down on his shoulders, like the pressure of a mile of ocean water. His knees buckled slightly. One of the security guards, a stout human with no supernatural sensitivity, reached for his taser. Silas didn't look at the guard. He looked at the paper. His eyes scanned the text with clinical disinterest. Then he folded it, once, twice, and slid it into his own pocket. "Congratulations," Thorne managed, his voice strained. "I had no idea you were claimed." "Neither did I, until recently." Silas's tone was utterly devoid of emotion. The mating frenzy is a powerful thing. One might say it makes a man irrational, possessive, prone to outbursts of violence. Harper nodded vigorously. "He broke a door last week, a solid oak door, with his bare hands." Silas's eye twitched. It was the only sign of amusement he allowed himself. Thorne swallowed. His throat bobbed. "Then I'm sure you'll want to protect her from any unwanted attention." "I do." Silas stepped closer. The vampire was tall, but Silas loomed over him like a thunderhead over a sapling. "I find it fascinating that you failed to mention your romantic interest in my mate during our previous meetings, when you reported directly to me." Harper's head snapped up. "What?" Thorne's face went from pale to bone white. I don't recall. The quarterly review, 3 months ago. You sat in my office, drank my whiskey, and told me the new archivist was a promising asset. That was your exact phrasing." Silas's voice was soft. Dangerous. "You failed to mention the supply closet incident." Harper stared. The words died on her tongue, trapped behind a sudden inability to process oxygen. What?" "Director Thorne," Silas continued, his gaze never leaving the vampire's face, "is currently facing an internal investigation for misuse of corporate funds, embezzlement, falsifying security logs. He has been under observation for weeks. His attempts to terminate you are not about performance reviews. They are about eliminating a witness." Harper grabbed Silas's sleeve. Wait. You're a corporate spy? I am the owner of this corporation." Silas looked down at her. "But I'm a very cheap gig worker, apparently. You owe me $30. The lobby went quiet. The chattering employees had stopped chattering. The security guards had frozen mid-step. Even the elevators seemed to pause. Thorne was sweating. Vampires didn't sweat, but Thorne was sweating. Small beads of moisture glistening on his forehead. His hands trembled. "Mr. Kane," Thorne whispered, "I can explain." "Explain what?" Harper's voice was shrill. "Explain that you've been trying to fire me so I couldn't talk about the embezzlement? Explain that you've been fake hitting on me for months to build a harassment case against me so my termination would look justified?" "Harper, please, let's be reasonable." "Reasonable?" Harper's laugh was a sharp crack in the silence. "I paid this man $20. $20 to fake a mating claim. And you're telling me I just sold my romantic rights to the owner of the company for less than a steak dinner?" Silas's golden eyes gleamed. "It was a very generous lunch budget." "Shut up." Harper pointed at him. You were supposed to be a broke actor from the app. Fade. You're supposed to be bad at this. You're supposed to be awkward and lanky and slightly creepy. I apologize for the inconvenience. You owe me an explanation." Harper's hands were on her hips. "You owe me a refund. And you owe me a new job, because I'm obviously not getting fired now. But I'm also obviously not working for a company where the owner disguises himself to investigate his own underlings." Silas tilted his head. "You want a new job. I want insurance. Consistent, reliable, non-extortionate insurance." Harper's voice was fierce. "I want a paycheck that arrives on time. I want a boss who doesn't try to kiss me in the supply closet." "Understood." Silas's gaze flicked to Thorne. "You're fired." Thorne's mouth opened. No words came out. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he collapsed onto the marble floor with a soft, elegant thud. Harper stepped over him. He'll be fine. Vampires can't actually faint. They just He's fine, Silas agreed. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the crumpled $20 bill, and handed it back to Harper. Your deposit is refunded. Harper stared at the money. What? The job is yours. Personal assistant to the CEO. Full benefits. Paid leave. A raise of 42%. Silas's voice was calm, clinical. The insurance is comprehensive. It covers diabetic supplies, medications, and emergency care. I checked. You're the only employee in the archiving department who has a documented medical exemption. Harper's mouth dropped open. You checked. My assistant briefed me on every employee profile after I noticed the suspicious termination patterns. Silas looked down at her, his expression locked behind a mask of cold corporate indifference. You're a good archivist, Harper. You're meticulous. You found the discrepancy in the ledger. That's why Thorne targeted you. You weren't the victim of a random workplace harassment campaign. You were a threat, and you didn't even know it. Harper was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and poked his chest. You're the bad guy, she said. Silas raised an eyebrow. I just fired your corrupt boss and offered you a promotion. You made me show my hand. You let me drag you around this lobby like a mop. You watched me threaten you with lunch money. Harper's eyes narrowed. That's not bad guy territory. That's psychopath territory. Interesting distinction. Silas's lips curved into that predator's smile. You'll have to teach me the difference. I'll teach you nothing until you give me a written contract, signed, notarized, with a witness. Harper crossed her arms. I want a trial period. I want a raise. And I want my $20 back. It's already in your hand. Then I want the $30 you promised for the gig. Silas laughed. It was a low, rough sound, rusty from disuse. The sound startled the security guards. It startled the employees lingering at the edges of the confrontation. It startled Harper so much that she took a full step back. You're going to be insufferable, aren't you? Harper said. I have been told that, yes. Great. She shoved the $20 bill back into her pocket. Fine. Fine, I accept the job. But we're going to have a long conversation about workplace conduct, and you're going to sit through it like a normal human CEO, and you're going to stop looking at me like I'm a piece of data. Silas's gaze remained steady. Those golden eyes had not left her face since she had grabbed his sleeve. I'm looking at you like a variable. I find variables fascinating. You find variables fascinating, Harper repeated flatly. That's the worst pickup line I've ever heard. It wasn't a pickup line. Good. Because I don't date variables. I date people who understand the concept of boundaries and schedules and lunch money deposits. Harper stepped around Thorne's unconscious body and started walking toward the elevators. I want the contract on my desk by 4 p.m. Hand-delivered. With a bow. Silas didn't move. He watched her walk away, the furious click of her heels echoing off the marble. The employees parted around her like a tide. Her back was straight, her shoulders determined, her posture that of a woman who had just survived a disaster and was already planning the next one. She stopped at the elevator bank and turned around. Well? Are you coming or not? Silas walked toward her. The crowd parted for him, too, but differently. With fear. With deference. With the instinctive recognition of something larger than themselves. He stopped beside her at the elevator doors. I'm coming. Good. Harper punched the call button. Because I have questions, lots of questions, and I expect answers that don't include lying about being a gig worker. I'll do my best. You have to do better than that. The elevator doors slid open. Harper stepped inside and spun to face him. You owe me, Silas. You owe me for the stress, the fear, the termination threats, and the complete collapse of my carefully planned morning. Silas stepped into the elevator beside her. The doors slid closed, sealing them in a small, silent space. He looked down at her, his features carefully schooled into absolute neutrality. "I owe you," he agreed. "What do you want?" Harper smiled. It was the smile of a predator. It was the smile of a woman who had just discovered she had a very sharp knife in her purse. "I want the full package," she said. "Salary, insurance, retirement. And you're going to go out there and tell every employee in that lobby that you're the AlphaKing." Silas's lips curved. "That's not a request. That's a demand. It's a negotiation." Harper crossed her arms. "And I'm very, very good at negotiations." The elevator began to rise. Silas stared at her, his golden eyes gleaming with something that might have been respect, or might have been hunger, or might have been a very dangerous kind of amusement. "We'll see," he said. "We'll see." Director Thorne's sharp, polished Italian loafers came to a halt on the marble floor, the soles squeaking against the polished stone like a dying mouse. He had regained consciousness exactly 92 seconds after collapsing, had been helped to his feet by a terrified intern, and had spent the intervening 3 minutes composing himself in the men's restroom. Now he stood in the center of the lobby, surrounded by a fresh contingent of security guards, these ones handpicked from the private contractor pool, men with thick necks and thicker wallets who didn't flinch at vampire supervisors. He smirked. The smirk was a calculated weapon. It was the smirk of a man who had just received a text from his lawyer confirming that the supreme AlphaKing, Silas Kane, had no legal standing to fire him without a board vote. The board was corrupt. The board was in Thorne's pocket. The board had been bought and paid for with embezzled funds that Thorne had very carefully laundered through a shell company in the Cayman Islands. "I want her terminated," Thorne announced to his guards. "Right here. Right now. I don't care about the mating claim. I don't care about the alpha. I care about the paperwork. And the paperwork says she's still an at-will employee." The elevator doors slid open. Harper stepped out first, her heels hitting the marble with the authoritative click of a woman who had just survived a very confusing 10-minute ride. Silas followed a half step behind, his trench coat billowing slightly from the elevator's air circulation, his golden eyes scanning the lobby with the bored disinterest of a lion surveying a herd of gazelles. Thorne's smirk widened. "Harper, so glad you could join us." Harper stopped. She looked at Thorne, then at the guards, then at the crowd of employees that had gathered in a loose semicircle around the scene. Phones were out. Videos were being recorded. This was going to be viral before lunch. "Director Thorne," Harper said, her voice flat. "I thought you were unconscious." "I recovered." Thorne stepped forward, rolling his shoulders back. "And I've been reviewing the corporate bylaws. It turns out that the AlphaKing cannot unilaterally terminate a director without board approval. And the board, Harper, has a very close relationship with me. So I'm still your boss. And I'm still firing you." Harper's eye twitched. She turned to Silas. "You didn't mention the board." Silas shrugged. The motion was almost imperceptible. "I was going to get to that." "You were going to." Harper pressed her palm to her forehead. "You're the owner. You're the supreme alpha. And you can't fire a vampire because of a board? The board is corrupt. I'm in the process of replacing them. It takes time." Silas's voice was calm, unhurried. "Unfortunately, Thorne has exploited the transition period." Harper stared at him. Then she looked at Thorne, who was now holding up the termination notice. A fresh copy, printed on official letterhead, signed and dated by the board's interim chair. 30 seconds, Thorne said, tapping his watch. "That's how long you have to vacate the premises before security escorts you out. And Harper, I'll make sure your insurance is canceled effective immediately. The paperwork is already filed." The crowd gasped. A few employees covered their mouths. Someone's coffee cup clattered to the floor. Harper's face went pale, then red. Then a very specific shade of furious that Silas found utterly fascinating. She turned to him, her blue eyes blazing. "Fine," she said. "We do it my way." "Your way?" "The performance. The fake rejection. The legal loophole." Harper grabbed his lapels and yanked him down to her eye level. "You're going to reject me. Loudly. Publicly. You're going to call me a worthless human and a terrible investment. You're going to humiliate me so badly that Thorne legally cannot fire me for 90 days. That's the plan. That's always been the plan." Silas's golden eyes flickered. "And if I don't want to reject you? Too bad. You're hired help. You're a gig worker. You do what I pay you to do." Harper released him and stepped back. "Now, follow my lead." She dropped to her knees. The marble floor was cold and hard against her shins. Harper didn't care. She had done this before. Well, not this exactly, but she had done desperate things for insurance before. She had cried in HR meetings. She had groveled to benefits coordinators. She had once pleaded with a claims adjuster over the phone for 45 minutes while her blood sugar dropped to dangerous levels. This was just another performance. "Oh, great Alpha," Harper wailed, her voice carrying across the entire lobby. "Please, I beg you, do not reject me. I know I am nothing but a lowly human archivist, a speck of dust beneath your magnificent boots, but I beseech you." Silas stared down at her. His expression was utterly blank, but something was happening beneath the surface. His jaw tightened. His hands, hanging at his sides, curled into fists. A muscle in his neck twitched. "Do not cast me aside like a crumpled receipt," Harper continued, her voice rising to a theatrical crescendo. "I will be your servant. I will bring you coffee. I will organize your files. I will even—" She hesitated, improvising wildly. "I will even alphabetize your spice rack." A few employees laughed nervously. Others filmed with rapt attention. Thorne smirked. "This is pathetic, Harper. Even for you." "I'm not done." Harper twisted on her knees, facing Thorne now, her hands clasped together in mock supplication. "Director Thorne, you see before you a woman who has been rejected. A woman who has been cast off by the very Alpha she thought she loved. Surely, under Article 47, you cannot fire me now. The mating claim has been formally rejected in public. The legal protections—" "You haven't been rejected yet," Thorne pointed out. "The Alpha hasn't said a word." Harper froze. She slowly turned her head to look at Silas. Silas was standing perfectly still. His golden eyes were locked on her kneeling form. His face was a mask of stone, but the stone was cracking at the edges. A vein throbbed in his temple. His broad chest rose and fell with slow, deliberate breaths. "Say it," Harper hissed, barely audible. "Say you reject me. It's part of the gig. Say it." Silas didn't say it. Instead, he let go. The alpha aura that he had been carefully suppressing for the past 15 minutes exploded outward like a physical shockwave. It was invisible, but the effects were immediate and catastrophic. The chandeliers above the lobby shuddered, their crystals clinking together in a discordant symphony. The marble floor beneath Thorne's feet developed hairline fractures that spider-webbed outward. Every employee within a 100-foot radius gasped, their knees buckling as the sheer weight of supernatural dominance pressed down on them like a gravitational pull. Harper felt it too. Her lungs compressed. Her heart hammered against her ribs. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare up at the man who had suddenly transformed from a cheap gig worker into an apex predator. Silas's eyes were glowing, not metaphorically, literally glowing, a molten gold that cast flickering shadows across his angular features. The air around him shimmered with heat. His black trench coat billowed despite the absence of any breeze. Thorne's smirk evaporated. His face went the color of old cheese. His knees, already weakened from the earlier confrontation, gave out completely, and he collapsed onto the fractured marble in a heap of expensive silk and terror. "What?" Thorne stammered. "What are you?" "I am the Supreme Alpha," Silas said. His voice was different now, deeper, resonant. It vibrated in Harper's chest like a bass drum. "I am the king of every wolf, every shifter, every creature that answers to the call of the moon. And you, Director Thorne, have threatened my mate." Harper's eyes went wide. "Wait, what?" Silas dropped to one knee in front of her. The move was fluid, graceful, utterly unexpected. His trench coat pooled around him on the marble floor like a dark halo. He reached out and took her hand, the left hand, the ring finger, and from his pocket, he produced a ring. It wasn't a modern ring. It was ancient, a heavy signet of blackened gold set with a massive ruby that seemed to pulse with internal fire. The band was inscribed with runes that Harper couldn't read, symbols that twisted and writhed as she looked at them. "How could I ever abandon you, my queen?" Silas declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the lobby. "You are the heart of my bloodline, the fire of my soul, the mate I have sought across centuries. To reject you would be to reject the very essence of my existence." He slid the ring onto her finger. It was too big. The heavy band slipped down past her knuckle and dangled loosely. Harper stared at it, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Silas leaned in close, his lips brushing her ear. His voice dropped to a whisper that only she could hear. "Play along. The legal protection you wanted? This is better. A public mating declaration. Uncontested. Unchallengeable. Thorne can't fire you for a year. Minimum." Harper's brain short-circuited. She had a million questions. She had a million protests. She had a million ways to tell him that this was not part of the gig, that he had gone completely off script, that she had only paid him $20, and $20 did not cover eternal soul-bonding rituals. But the lobby was watching. The phones were recording. Thorne was hyperventilating on the floor, his pale hands clawing at the marble. Harper started. "I don't—" "Say yes," Silas murmured, "or I'll tell the entire company about the $20. She glared at him. He glared back, his golden eyes dancing with amusement. "Yes," Harper said, loud enough for the crowd. "Yes, my Alpha. I accept she swallowed, your eternal devotion. Or whatever." The crowd erupted. It wasn't applause. It was pandemonium. Employees screamed. Security guards ran in circles. A middle-aged woman from accounting fainted dead away, her clipboard clattering to the floor. Someone's phone slipped from their grip and shattered against the marble. The chandeliers were still trembling, sending cascades of light across the chaos. Thorne tried to crawl away. His legs wouldn't cooperate. He dragged himself across the floor like a wounded centipede, his Italian suit gathering dust and gravel. "The board," he gasped. "The board will." "The board is being liquidated," Silas said, not even looking at him. "As of 30 seconds ago, I have enacted the emergency dissolution clause. The board no longer exists. You no longer work here. You no longer have any legal standing to threaten my mate." A strangled, pathetic wheeze escaped his throat, as if his vocal cords had paralyzed. A strangled noise escaped his throat, something between a whimper and a sob. Then his eyes rolled back, and for the second time that morning, he collapsed into unconsciousness. Harper watched him go down. Then she looked at the ring on her finger. Then at Silas, who was still kneeling in front of her. "You realize," she said, her voice dangerously quiet, "that this is not what I paid you for. You paid me $20. $30 if you finish the gig, which you haven't. I just gave you a priceless, ancient signet ring that belonged to the first AlphaKing. It's worth approximately $8 million. I think we can call it even." Silas rose to his feet, offering her a hand. Harper ignored the hand. She scrambled up on her own, brushing dust from her knees. $8 million. You just gave me $8 million worth of jewelry for a 3-hour gig. Inflation, Silas said smoothly. The economy is unpredictable. Don't you dare make jokes about the economy. I'm uninsured. I'm unemployed. I'm now apparently engaged to the supreme AlphaKing of the entire supernatural world, and I have exactly $30 in my checking account. Harper gestured wildly at the chaos around them. Look at this. Look at this mess. The glass is cracked. The floor is ruined. People are fainting. This is a disaster. Silas surveyed the lobby with detached calm. I think it's rather romantic. It's not romantic. It's a liability. Harper pointed at him. You're a liability. You're a walking, talking, aura-exploding liability. And I want a raise. Personal assistant to the CEO. I already offered. That was before. Harper held up the ring. Before you made me your fake queen. Now I want hazard pay. I want danger bonuses. I want comprehensive coverage for emotional trauma and public humiliation. Silas's lips curved into that predatory smile. You drive a hard bargain. I'm an archivist. I'm trained to find value in everything. Harper crossed her arms. Now get up. Stop kneeling. You're making everyone uncomfortable. He rose. The motion was fluid, effortless, the ease of a man who had never once in his life worried about knee strain. He towered over her, his shadow swallowing her frame. I'll draft a contract, he said. Full benefits, unlimited sick days, a company car. I don't want a car. I want a raise. You'll get a raise. And I want a new desk. The old one has a wobble. Done. And I want Thorne's office, the corner one, with the windows. Silas glanced at the unconscious vampire. It's yours. Harper nodded, satisfied. Then she looked down at the ring again. The ruby pulsed with a soft, internal light. The runes seemed to shift and rearrange themselves in her periphery. This stays on, Silas said, his voice dropping. Until I say otherwise. The legal protections only work if you're visibly marked. That's not creepy at all. It's the law. It's a sexist, archaic, supernatural law that treats marriage like a property transfer, Harper shot back. But fine, I'll wear it. For the insurance. The insurance. And the office. And the raise. She pointed at his chest. But if this ring turns out to have any hidden magical properties, like mind control, or tracking, or spontaneous combustion, I'm billing you for damages. Silas's golden eyes gleamed. I wouldn't dream of it. The lobby was slowly settling into a stunned silence. Employees were helping each other up. Security guards were dragging Thorne's unconscious body toward the exit. A janitor had already appeared with a mop and a bucket, his expression one of grim resignation. Harper turned to the crowd. She raised her voice, her tone brisk and professional. All right, everyone. Show's over. Get back to work. And someone please get a statement from HR about the new benefits package. I want to review it by lunch. A few employees nodded numbly. Others were still filming. Harper grabbed Silas's sleeve and yanked him toward the executive elevator. Come on. We have contracts to write, and I need coffee. Silas allowed himself to be dragged. The elevator doors closed behind them, sealing them off from the carnage. You're going to be a handful, he said. Harper didn't look at him. She was already pulling out a crumpled receipt from her pocket, using the back to scribble notes. You have no idea, she said. I want a clause about overtime. I want a clause about holiday pay. I want a clause about not being used as bait in corporate power struggles. Silas leaned against the elevator wall, crossing his arms. His trench coat settled around him like a dark curtain. You're negotiating with the most powerful creature in the city, he said. And you're writing terms on a receipt. Paper is paper. Power is power. And right now, I have the ring. That makes me the queen. Harper looked up, her blue eyes sharp. And queens don't take orders. They give them. Silas laughed again. The sound was warmer this time, almost genuine. I think I'm going to enjoy having you around, he said. Harper snorted. Enjoy it while it lasts. I'm a temporary hire. 3 months, max. We'll see, he said again. Harper jabbed her pen at him. You said that already. In the elevator. It's a terrible catchphrase. Get a new one." The elevator ascended. The lobby below them was a wreck of cracked marble, scattered phones, and unconscious vampires. But above it all, in the quiet hum of the rising car, two people stood facing each other, one furious and calculating, one amused and entranced, and neither of them had any idea what they had just started. The heavy, vacuum-sealed thud of an armored limousine door slammed shut, and the world outside disappeared into a hush of tinted glass and soundproof steel. Harper's ears popped from the pressure change. She was sitting on a leather seat that cost more than her monthly rent, surrounded by ambient lighting that shifted between cool blue and warm gold, facing a minibar that probably contained whiskey older than her grandmother. Silas settled into the seat across from her with the fluid grace of a man who had been deposited into luxury vehicles his entire life. His long legs stretched out, crossed at the ankle, his trench coat pooling around him like a dark puddle. The limousine began to move, a smooth, silent glide that betrayed the presence of a massive engine somewhere beneath the floorboards. Harper immediately started clawing at the ring on her finger. The heavy blackened gold band spun loosely around her knuckle, but when she tried to slide it off, it caught. She yanked. Nothing. She twisted. The ring spun, but refused to pass the joint of her finger. She tugged harder, her face flushing with effort. "What the—" Harper grunted, pulling with both hands. "It won't come off." Silas watched her with the detached interest of a naturalist observing a beetle attempting to flip itself over. "It's a bonding ring. It adjusts to fit the wearer once the declaration is accepted. The runes are adaptive." "So it shrunk?" Harper glared at him, still yanking. "It shrunk to fit my finger without my permission?" "Technically, it contracted and molecularly bonded to your specific bone structure. The metal is enchanted to self-adjust. It will continue to fit you until the bond is dissolved, which, I should mention, requires my explicit consent, and a formal ceremony, and exactly 1 year of paperwork, the minimum duration of the legal protection you demanded in the lobby." Harper stopped pulling. Her hands dropped to her lap. She stared at the ruby, which pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light, like a heartbeat. "You gave me a ring that's basically supernatural superglue. I gave you an $8 million heirloom. The fact that it's also a binding artifact is incidental." "Incidental." Harper's voice was flat. "You're the king of the wolves. Nothing you do is incidental." Silas watched her closely, his amber gaze flickering with something that might have been respect. "You're quick." "I'm an archivist. I find patterns." Harper reached into her pocket and pulled out the crumpled $20 bill. She leaned forward, shoving it toward his chest. "Take it back. Cancel the transaction. I want a refund. I want to erase the last 20 minutes of my life and pretend I never met you." Silas didn't take the bill. He didn't even look at it. His gaze remained fixed on her face, studying the flush of anger spreading across her cheeks. "You can't cancel," he said calmly. "The declaration was made in front of 100 witnesses. 93 of them were supernatural beings with ties to the council. The moment you said yes and I placed the ring, the bond became legally and magically enforceable." Harper's hand, still holding the bill, trembled slightly. "Enforceable how?" "By the laws of the crown. The Supreme Alpha's word is law. His mate's word is law. Backing out now, publicly, after such a definitive display?" Silas leaned back, crossing his arms. "That's not just a breach of contract. That's technically treason against the crown. The penalty for treason is— don't say it— immolation by lunar fire." Harper stared at him. The words died on her tongue, trapped behind a sudden inability to process oxygen. She was making the same fish face she'd made in the lobby, but this time there was real panic behind it. Her pupils dilated. A bead of sweat trickled down her temple. "Immolation," she repeated. "Lunar fire. You're telling me that if I tell the HR department I was just acting, I get set on fire by the moon?" "The council takes these matters seriously. The supernatural community operates on a very strict honor code. Public mating declarations are sacred. Violating them undermines the entire social structure. Silas's tone was almost conversational. You'd be an example. A very crispy example. Harper's trembling hand lowered. The $20 bill fluttered against her thigh. She looked at it, then at him, then back at the ring. This is a hostage situation, she said. You've taken me hostage. I've made you my queen. There's a difference? Silas laughed. It was a low, genuine rumble that vibrated through the leather seats. I'm starting to understand why Thorne was so threatened by you. You have a gift for cutting through the nonsense. I'm not cutting through anything. I'm trying to survive. Harper's voice cracked slightly. I need insulin. I need insurance. I need a job that doesn't involve supernatural politics and priceless jewelry that won't come off my finger. Silas's laugh faded. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his expression shifting from amusement to something more serious. You'll get the job. You'll get the insurance. You'll get the office with the windows. The ring is a bonus. But if you want to walk away, if you truly want to dissolve the bond, I'll find a way. It won't be easy. It won't be quick. But I won't keep you trapped. Harper's eyes narrowed. You just said it takes 6 months of paperwork. I'm the king. I can expedite. But I'm not going to do it on the basis of a crumpled $20 bill. Silas reached out and gently took the bill from her hand. He folded it neatly, crease by crease, and placed it on the minibar between them. You hired me for a gig. The gig is over. Now we're negotiating a new arrangement. Harper watched the bill sit there, a pathetic little square of green paper on a polished mahogany surface. She exhaled slowly, deliberately. Her shoulders dropped from their defensive hunch. Her eyes stopped darting. She was in HR mode now, Harper the archivist, the woman who could spot a misfiled document from 50 paces. Okay, she said, her voice steadying. Fine, let's negotiate. Silas's lips curved. I'm listening. First, I want a comprehensive breakdown of the benefits package. Not the generic corporate one. The one for the Alpha Queen. What's the health coverage? Dental? Vision? Mental health? I'm going to need a lot of mental health after today. Silas pulled a tablet from a compartment beside his seat. His fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency. Full medical, unlimited therapy, access to the supernatural healing wards, faster recovery, reduced pain, tissue regeneration for injuries. Coverage extends to immediate family, should you have any. I'm an orphan. No family. Harper ticked the box mentally. Next, compensation. Salary, bonuses, hazard pay, and overtime. Base salary, $2 million per annum. Quarterly bonuses tied to corporate performance. Hazard pay is negotiable, but I'll set a baseline of $500,000 per incident involving assassination attempts, hostile takeovers, or direct supernatural threats. Harper blinked. Per incident. Per incident. That's a lot of money. You're the queen. You'll attract attention. Attention attracts danger. I'm not going to let you face it without compensation. Silas's voice was matter of fact. Anything else? Harper's brain was spinning. She was calculating. $2 million a year. $500,000 per assassination attempt. She could buy insulin for the rest of her life. She could buy a house. She could buy a small island if the assassination attempts were frequent enough. Overtime, she said firmly. I want time and a half for anything over 40 hours a week. And I want a clear definition of queen duties, so I don't end up planning galas and arranging flowers. Silas's golden eyes gleamed. Queen duties. Primarily public appearances, ceremonial functions, and acting as a visible symbol of the crown's stability. You'll also be expected to accompany me to board meetings and political negotiations. No flower arrangements. I'll hire a florist. Good. I'm allergic to lilies. Harper crossed her legs, leaning back in her seat. What about the board? You said they're being liquidated. What's the timeline? Internal investigation. Interrogations. Asset seizures. I'd say 2 weeks before we have a clean slate. Silas set the tablet down. But during that 2 weeks, I'll need you at my side. The board members are corrupt, but they're also connected. They'll try to discredit me. If I have a public mate, a human mate, a commoner mate, it undermines their arguments. They'll claim I'm unstable, unworthy of the crown. So I'm a shield. You're a very effective shield. They can't attack me directly without alienating the supernatural population, but they can attack you, which is why I need you to stay close, stay visible, and stay alive. Harper's fingers moved to the ring, spinning it absently around her finger. And if I do all this, public appearances, political posturing, being your human shield, I get the benefits. The money, the insurance, the office, and my gratitude, which, I assure you, is worth more than all of it. I'll take the money. Harper leaned forward, her eyes sharp. And I want a termination clause, a mutual one. If, after the board is dissolved, we decide this arrangement isn't working, we can walk away, cleanly. No lunar fire, no paperwork, no 6-month delays. Silas's smile faded. His expression became unreadable. You want the option to leave. I want the option to survive. This is a temporary gig, Silas. You said so yourself. The board, the threat, the mating declaration, it's all situational. Once it's over, I'm going back to my life. A life that does not include supernatural politics or eternal soul bonds. The silence stretched between them. The limousine glided through the city, its tinted windows revealing only the blurred shapes of buildings and pedestrians. 6 months, Silas said finally. I'll write the termination clause for 6 months. After that, either party can dissolve the bond with a formal declaration and a simple ritual. No lunar fire, no paperwork. 12 months, Harper countered. 12 months, plus a performance review. If I'm not satisfied with the working conditions, I get to leave early. 7 months. 10. 8.5. 9. Final offer. Harper extended her hand. 9 months. Full benefits, hazard pay, overtime, termination clause, and an office with windows that actually open. Silas looked at her extended hand. Then he reached out and took it. His grip was warm, firm, surprisingly gentle. 9 months. Terms accepted. They shook. Harper felt the ring shift slightly on her finger, as if it was settling into a more comfortable position. She ignored it. Now, she said, pulling her hand back, I need to see the contract. Written, signed, notarized, and I want a copy in triplicate. Already in the works. My legal team is drafting it as we speak. Silas tapped his tablet. They'll have a preliminary version ready by 5 p.m. You'll have 24 hours to review and request changes. Harper nodded, satisfied. And what about Thorne? He's still unconscious in the lobby. Someone's going to wake him up eventually. By the time he wakes up, he'll be in a holding cell. The council's holding cell. He's looking at a minimum of 500 years for embezzlement, falsification, and attempted assassination of a crown-appointed mate. 500 years. That's a long time. He's a vampire. He'll get over it. Silas reached for the minibar, pulling out a bottle of water. He offered it to Harper. She took it, uncapped it, and drank half in one long swallow. The water was cold, crisp, and tasted faintly of minerals. It was the most expensive water she'd ever consumed. So, she said, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. What's the first official duty of the fake queen? Silas's golden eyes flickered. The annual corporate gala. It's in 3 hours. The remaining directors are going to be attending, and they will be nervous. They know I'm coming for them. They'll try to deflect, deny, and stall. I need you to sit beside me, wear the ring prominently, and look completely unimpressed. I can do unimpressed. I've been unimpressed with you since you said lunch money with a straight face. Silas laughed again. The sound filled the limousine's interior, warm and rich. You're going to be a nightmare, aren't you? I'm going to be the best nightmare you've ever had. Harper leaned back, cradling the water bottle. And I want hazard pay for the board meeting. It's my first incident. That's $500,000. It's not an assassination attempt. Did I mention the board members are corrupt and desperate? Desperate people do desperate things. There could be poison in the coffee. There could be a hidden crossbow. You don't know. Silas's lips twitched. I'll authorize a preliminary hazard bonus, $250,000, to be paid out after the meeting, regardless of outcome. Harper extended her hand again. Deal. He shook it. This time, his grip lingered a moment longer. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, just barely, and Harper felt a small jolt of static electricity. She pulled her hand back quickly. Do not touch me like that. We're not a couple. We're a professional arrangement. There will be no hand-holding, no eye-gazing, and definitely no romantic gestures. The ring is a prop. I'm a prop. You're a prop. We're all props in a very elaborate corporate drama. Silas's expression was unreadable. Understood. Good. Harper finished the water and set the empty bottle on the minibar. Now, tell me about the board. Names, weaknesses, financial vulnerabilities. I want to go in there ready to eviscerate them with spreadsheets. Silas's golden eyes gleamed with something that might have been anticipation. He reached for the tablet, pulling up a dossier. Meet the board of Apex Vanguard, he said, turning the screen toward her. 5 directors, 2 vampires, 2 shifters, and 1 very anxious human who gotten over his head. Their combined net worth is roughly $9 billion. Their combined secrets are worth more. Harper scanned the faces. She memorized names, titles, financial histories. She noted the nervous twitch in the human's photograph, the calculated smiles of the vampires, the rigid postures of the shifters. They're afraid, she said. All of them. Even the vampires. You can see it in the micro-expressions. Afraid of me. Afraid of losing their money. Harper looked up. I can use that. Fear is the best leverage. Fear plus documentation equals compliance. Give me access to the financial records, and I'll have them eating out of your hand by dessert. Silas leaned back, his arms crossing over his chest. You want access to the company's confidential ledgers. I'm an archivist. It's what I do. I organize, I categorize, and I find the paper trails that people are trying to hide. Harper tapped the ring. And I've got a 9-month contract. I'm not going to waste it twiddling my thumbs. The limousine slowed. Harper glanced out the window. They were pulling into an underground garage, the concrete walls lined with sleek, black vehicles. Armed guards stood at intervals, their postures alert. We're here, Silas said. The Apex Tower, the grand ballroom. The board is waiting to see if the rumors of my mating are true. Harper straightened her blouse, ran a hand through her hair, and squared her shoulders. Let's go make some vampires cry. Silas smiled. It was a slow, dangerous smile that reached his eyes. My queen. Don't call me that until I've seen the contract. They stepped out of the limousine. The garage air was cool and faintly metallic. Harper's heels echoed against the concrete as she walked beside Silas, her stride matching his, her chin held high. The guards fell into formation around them. One of them, a hulking shifter with a scarred cheek, glanced at Harper's ring and immediately averted his gaze. I'm going to have to get used to that, Harper muttered. Used to what? People being terrified of me. I've spent my whole life being ignored. Now I'm a walking threat to corporate stability. She elbowed him lightly. Thanks for that. Silas's golden eyes glinted in the dim garage light. You're welcome. They reached the executive elevator. The doors slid open, revealing a mirrored interior that gleamed like a jewel box. Harper stepped inside, followed by Silas, the guards remaining behind. As the doors closed, sealing them in private silence, Harper turned to face him. This is going to be a very long 9 months, she said. It's going to be the most entertaining 9 months of my life, Silas replied. Harper snorted. Entertaining. Right. I'm a source of entertainment now. You're a source of many things. Entertainment is just one of them. The elevator began to rise. Harper felt the ring on her finger pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She ignored it. She had a board meeting to conquer, a contract to review, and a fake king to wrangle. She was ready. The sharp clinking of a crystal champagne flute being aggressively tapped with a silver spoon cut through the ambient string quartet like a fire alarm in a library. Harper stood at the center of the Apex Tower's grand ballroom, one hand raised, the other holding the offending flute, her face arranged into an expression of supreme, theatrical boredom. The crowd of 200 supernatural elites, corporate executives, and high society hangers-on turned to stare. Tuxedos rustled. Gowns swished. A vampire in a velvet smoking jacket dropped his canapé. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harper announced, her voice carrying across the marble floor with the force of a drill sergeant, "I'd like to make a toast to the board that has graciously hosted this evening of insufferable small talk and aggressively mediocre champagne." A ripple of nervous laughter. The board members, clustered near the stage, exchanged uneasy glances. Silas stood at the far edge of the ballroom, half hidden behind a pillar, his golden eyes fixed on his fake queen with an intensity that bordered on predatory. Harper continued, waving the flute carelessly. "I've been a queen for approximately 6 hours now, and I've already learned that the supernatural elite are exactly like human elites. They're obsessed with status, terrified of irrelevance, and utterly convinced that their vintage port collection makes them interesting." The nervous laughter died. A shifter in a floor-length gown gasped. The vampire in the smoking jacket, who happened to be Director Marcus Vex, the second most powerful vampire on the board, stepped forward with a cold smile. "Your Majesty," Vex said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "we were not aware that you had such strong opinions about our hospitality." "I have strong opinions about everything," Harper replied, setting the flute down on a passing tray. "For example, I have a strong opinion about your bow tie. It's crooked. And your cologne is overwrought. You smell like a funeral home that's trying too hard." Vex's smile froze. His pale cheeks flushed with a hint of color, a dangerous sign in a vampire. "I assure you, my cologne is a custom blend from Paris. I don't care where it's from. It's aggressive. It's like you're trying to gaslight everyone in a 10-foot radius into thinking you have a personality." Harper waved a dismissive hand. "Now, where's the buffet?" "I was promised a buffet, and I've been standing here for 20 minutes listening to a man in a monocle explain the intricacies of werewolf inheritance law. I need carbs." She pushed past Vex, threading through the crowd with the unapologetic confidence of a woman who had just negotiated a $2 million salary. The guests parted before her, their expressions a mix of awe, horror, and grudging admiration. The buffet was a sprawling expanse of white linen, silver chafing dishes, and ice sculptures in the shape of howling wolves. Harper grabbed a plate and began piling it with shrimp cocktail, miniature quiches, and a towering stack of smoked salmon canapés. She ignored the serving tongs, using her fingers with the casual entitlement of a monarch who had never been told no. "Your Majesty," a trembling human waiter whispered, "would you like me to?" "I know how to use a plate, thank you." Harper stuffed a quiche into her mouth, chewed aggressively, and surveyed the room. "This is acceptable. Barely. The shrimp is a little rubbery. Tell the chef to steam it less." The waiter fled. Silas watched from behind his pillar, his arms crossed, his lips pressed into a thin line to suppress the grin that threatened to break across his face. Harper was magnificent. She was a tornado in an evening gown. The gown was a borrowed creation of black silk and gold embroidery that had been delivered to her suite an hour before the gala, and she had complained about the fit for 17 minutes before declaring it good enough. Now she was using it as a weapon, sweeping through the aristocracy like a scythe through wheat. Director Vex followed her, his expression darkening with each step. Your Majesty, I must insist that you moderate your behavior. This is a formal gathering. The council representatives are present. The council representatives can deal with it. Harper grabbed a lobster claw and pointed it at him. You know what I find interesting, Vex? Your financial disclosures. Or rather, the lack thereof. There's a very interesting gap in your asset declarations from 2019 to 2021. $3 million, unaccounted for. Care to explain? Vex's face went from flushed to chalk white. Those records are confidential. Not anymore. I had my archivist eyes on them for about 15 minutes this afternoon. Harper bit into the lobster claw, crunching through the shell with alarming efficiency. You're laundering money through a shell company in the Bermuda Triangle. The Triangle, not even the Caymans. That's just lazy. The crowd around them had gone silent. Vex's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. His hands, clenched at his sides, trembled visibly. I have no idea what you're talking about, he managed. Of course you don't. Harper tossed the empty lobster shell onto a passing plate. But the council will, once I forward them the documentation. And by the way, your bow tie is still crooked. Might want to fix that before your perp walk. She turned and walked away, leaving Vex standing in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by whispering aristocrats and rapidly retreating allies. Silas pushed off from his pillar and intercepted Harper near the champagne fountain. His golden eyes were gleaming with barely contained delight. You're enjoying this. I'm enjoying the food. The sabotage is a bonus. Harper grabbed a fresh flute of champagne, the good stuff, vintage, not the mediocre earlier batch, and took a long sip. Did you see his face? I thought he was going to combust. Can vampires combust? Not spontaneously, but you came close to causing a stroke. Silas leaned in, his voice dropping to a low murmur. The council representatives are already asking questions. Vex is going to flee. And when he does, we'll have evidence of flight to add to the embezzlement charges. Harper nodded, crunching on a canapé. I want hazard pay for this. Emotional distress. I had to stand next to a man who kept telling me about his yacht. His yacht. He named it the Fang. That's not a yacht. That's a cry for help. Silas laughed, a low rumble that vibrated in his chest. You're billing me for emotional distress? I'm billing you for everything. I have a spreadsheet. Harper patted her clutch purse, which contained a folded piece of paper covered in tiny, furious handwriting. I'll present it to you after the gala. Prepare your checkbook. The evening continued. Harper made a point of insulting every board member within earshot. She told the human director, a nervous man named Joffrey, that his toupee was an act of aggression against good taste. She informed the female shifter director, a formidable woman with silver-streaked hair, that her dress made her look like a curtain that had given up. She spilled champagne on the third vampire's shoes and didn't apologize. By the time the gala wound down, the board members had collectively retreated to a corner, huddling like survivors of a shipwreck. Harper had eaten her weight in seafood, insulted 12 executives, and single-handedly accelerated the investigation by at least a month. Silas escorted her out through a private exit, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. She didn't flinch. She was too busy mentally cataloging the night's expenses. You're a natural, he said as they stepped into the limousine. I'm a professional. There's a difference. Harper collapsed into the leather seat, kicking off her heels. My feet are killing me. The shoes were half a size too small. I'm billing you for foot pain. Add it to the spreadsheet. The limousine drove through the night, eventually pulling through the gates of Silas's sprawling estate. It was a modern fortress of glass and stone, perched on a hill overlooking the city. Harper had seen it from the outside during the day. Now, at midnight, it was a cascade of warm lights and shadowed gardens. They walked through the cavernous foyer, past silent staff who bowed their heads, and into the private wing. Silas led her to a suite that was larger than her entire apartment, dominated by a massive velvet bed draped in deep burgundy and gold. Harper immediately grabbed a calculator from her clutch purse and dropped onto the edge of the bed. The velvet sank beneath her, plush and ridiculously comfortable. She ignored it. She was on a mission. "Okay," she said, clicking the calculator buttons aggressively. Base compensation. Hazard bonus for the gala. Emotional distress for the yacht conversation. Foot pain surcharge. Plus the cost of the quiche I had to eat to maintain my cover. That's an additional $17.50. Silas leaned against the bedpost, watching her with an expression of rapt fascination. His golden eyes tracked her fingers as they danced across the calculator. He had shed his tuxedo jacket. His shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal corded forearms, his top two buttons undone. $17.50, he repeated. For the quiche, it was rubbery. I deserve compensation. Harper punched in more numbers. Plus a trauma fee for having to smell Vex's cologne for 3 hours. That's $200. I have asthma. You don't have asthma. You don't know that. I could have asthma. I'm a complex medical case. Harper scribbled a final number on her paper and held it up. Total, $342,759.17. Silas moved from the bedpost. He crossed the room in 3 silent strides and sat down on the bed beside her. The mattress dipped with his weight, tilting her toward him. $342,000, he said, his voice low. For one evening. One evening of emotional warfare. I destroyed Vex. I exposed Joffrey's toupee. I made the shifter director cry. She didn't cry. She blinked rapidly. That's crying in shifter culture. I looked it up. Harper brandished the paper. Pay up, King. Silas reached out and gently took the paper from her hand. His fingers brushed against hers, warm and calloused. He studied the numbers for a moment, then looked at her, his golden eyes inches from her own. You're extorting me, he said. I'm billing you. There's a difference. Extortion is illegal. Billing is business. Harper's voice was steady, but her pulse had picked up. He was close. Very close. His scent, something clean and woodsy, like pine and ozone, filled her nostrils. Business, Silas repeated. His gaze dropped to the ring on her finger. The ruby pulsed softly in the dim light. You're very good at business. I'm very good at everything. I'm a delight. Harper leaned back slightly, trying to create space. Now are you going to approve the charges, or do I have to send this to your legal team? Silas laughed. It was a deep, genuine sound that rumbled through the velvet bed. He set the paper aside and leaned back on his hands, his long legs stretching out in front of him. Approved, he said. I'll have the funds transferred to your account by morning. Harper blinked. Just like that? Just like that. His golden eyes were warm, amused, utterly captivated. You're worth every penny, Harper. Every single penny. She stared at him. The calculator was still in her hand. The paper was on the bed. The ring pulsed against her finger. That's not how negotiations work, she said finally. You're supposed to counteroffer. Haggle. Tell me the quiche wasn't that bad. The quiche was terrible. You deserve the compensation. Silas tilted his head, studying her. I've never met anyone like you. You're completely unimpressed by me. You treat me like a bureaucratic hurdle. And you just destroyed my most dangerous board member in 3 hours with a lobster claw and a spreadsheet. Harper's lips twitched. I had a quiche, too. It was a team effort. An unstoppable team. Silas reached out, his hand hovering near her face. He didn't touch her. He just let his fingers hang there, a hair's breadth from her cheek. I could watch you work forever. Harper's breath caught. The air between them was charged, electric. The ring hummed against her skin. Don't do that, she said quietly. Don't do what? Don't look at me like I'm your actual queen. I'm a temp, a consultant. I'm here for the insurance and the hazard pay. Her voice was firm, but her eyes betrayed her. They flickered down to his lips, then back up. Silas saw it. His smile widened, slow and dangerous. Of course, a consultant. My mistake. I'm glad we agree. Harper grabbed the paper and shoved it back into her purse. Now I'm going to bed. I have to be up early tomorrow to review the rest of the board's financial records. There's a trail of embezzlement that goes all the way back to 2017, and I'm going to find it. She stood up, her bare feet sinking into the thick carpet. Silas remained seated on the bed, watching her with that unreadable expression. "Good night, Harper," he said. "Good night, King." She walked toward the door, then paused, turning back. "And Silas?" "Yes?" "You smiled. At the gala. I saw you hiding behind that pillar. You were struggling to suppress it." Silas's golden eyes gleamed. "I was. You're not as intimidating as you think you are." Harper opened the door. "But I'm still billing you for the emotional damage of having to watch you pretend to be stoic." She slipped out, closing the door behind her. Silas sat alone on the massive velvet bed, staring at the closed door. His hand, still hovering in the air where her face had been, slowly lowered. He liked her. He liked her more than he had liked anyone in centuries. She was sharp, fearless, and utterly unimpressed by his power. She treated him like an employee, a budget line item, a minor inconvenience in her quest for insurance and stability. And she had just billed him for emotional distress. Silas laughed, the sound echoing in the empty room. He lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling, his hands folded behind his head. 9 months, he murmured to himself. This is going to be the most expensive 9 months of my life. But he was smiling. And he didn't try to stop it. The violent, synchronized shattering of the estate's reinforced skylights sent a cascade of tempered glass raining down onto the marble floor of the East Wing gallery. Harper looked up from her spreadsheet. She had been cross-referencing Director Vex's offshore accounts with a shipping manifest from 2019 and watched 17 black-clad figures drop through the jagged holes like spiders descending on silk threads. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. Her hand moved automatically to the pepper spray in her clutch purse, the one she had bought after a particularly aggressive benefits coordinator had tried to deny her insulin coverage. Her eyes scanned the intruders with the cold, analytical precision of a woman who had spent years cataloging archival materials. 17 assassins. 2 vampires. 3 shifters. She could see the telltale tension in their shoulders, the way their eyes glowed faintly in the dim gallery light. The rest were humans, probably mercenaries hired for their disposable nature and lack of supernatural conscience. The lead assassin landed directly in front of her, a tall figure in matte black tactical gear, a silver blade gleaming in each hand. His face was covered by a balaclava, but his eyes, cold, reptilian, utterly without mercy, locked onto hers. "Harper Locke," he said, his voice muffled. "You're coming with us." Harper set down her pen. She closed the spreadsheet with deliberate care. Then she looked up at the assassin, her blue eyes sharp as broken glass. "I'm in the middle of something," she said. "Can this wait?" The assassin blinked. It was the first sign of hesitation. He had been trained to deal with screams, pleas, and futile resistance. He had not been trained to deal with bureaucratic scheduling conflicts. "This isn't a request," he said, stepping closer. "The board wants you, alive, for now." Harper's eyes flicked to the flash drive that had fallen from the assassin's pocket when he landed. It was a small, unremarkable black rectangle, nestled innocently among the shattered glass. "Your pocket," she said. "You dropped something." The assassin looked down. Harper moved. She grabbed the heavy antique lamp from the side table. Bronze base, cast iron shade, easily 40 pounds of Victorian craftsmanship, and swung it in a wide arc that connected with the assassin's temple. The impact was a wet crack, the sound of expensive tactical gear failing against unyielding metal. The assassin crumpled to the floor, his silver blades clattering against the marble. The other assassins froze. They had been fanning out, securing the perimeter, expecting an easy extraction. They had not expected their leader to be felled by a lamp. Harper didn't give them time to recover. She grabbed the fire extinguisher from its mounting bracket on the wall. She had noticed it during her initial tour, cataloging every emergency exit and safety device in the East Wing, and wrenched the pin free. The first vampire lunged. Harper aimed the nozzle and pulled the trigger. A blast of white chemical foam caught the vampire in the face, sending him reeling backward, clawing at his eyes with a shriek of agony. The foam wasn't silver, but it was cold, viscous, and deeply unpleasant. It bought her exactly 3 seconds. She used them to grab the pepper spray from her clutch. The two shifters charged simultaneously, their forms already rippling with the beginnings of transformation. Harper sprayed left, then right, the capsaicin mist hitting their sensitive snouts with devastating accuracy. They howled, clawing at their faces, their shift stalling as their bodies struggled to process the sudden chemical assault. The human mercenaries hesitated. They were professionals, but they were also human, and they had just watched a 5'4" archivist take down a vampire, 2 shifters, and their team leader with household items. "Back up," Harper said, her voice flat and cold. "I have a spreadsheet that's more dangerous than any of you, and I'm not afraid to use it." The mercenaries backed up. Harper bent down and plucked the flash drive from the floor. She slipped it into her pocket. Then she reached down, grabbed the groaning assassin leader by the back of his tactical vest, and hauled him upright. "Walk," she said, shoving him toward the shattered skylight. "We're going to the main hall. You're going to tell me who sent you, or I'm going to use this fire extinguisher as a bludgeon." The assassin stumbled. His head was bleeding, his vision swimming, but he was still conscious. He groaned something unintelligible. "I'm sorry," Harper said. "I didn't catch that. Speak up." "The board," he gasped. "The board sent us. Vex, Joffrey, all of them. They want you gone. Gone as in dead, or gone as in kidnapped? Kidnapped first, dead later. The ring, it binds you to the Alpha. They need to break the bond before they can kill you." Harper nodded, filing the information away. Keeping one heel planted firmly between his shoulder blades, she reached over to her still-open laptop on the side table and jammed the flash drive into the port. A directory instantly popped up. She scanned the file names, her archivist eyes widening with realization. "Well," she murmured, "it seems you boys stole the master ledger to ensure I couldn't access it while kidnapped. That was a tactical error." She shoved him forward again. The mercenaries had scattered, fleeing through the shattered windows, their professionalism crumbling in the face of a woman armed with pepper spray and a very expensive lamp. They reached the main hall just as the heavy oak doors burst open. Silas tore through them like they were paper. He was fully shifted, a towering nightmare of fur and muscle. His wolf form was imposing, easily the size of a horse, with a broad chest and jaws that could crush steel. His fur was dark, almost black, streaked with silver, and his claws left gouges in the marble floor as he lunged into the room. He was ready to kill. He was ready to massacre every single intruder, to tear them limb from limb, to paint the walls with their blood. The alpha aura that radiated from him was suffocating, a physical weight that pressed down on the room like a collapsing building. Then he froze. Harper was standing on the back of the groaning assassin leader, one heel planted firmly between his shoulder blades. The fire extinguisher was propped against her hip. The pepper spray was in her other hand. Her clutch purse was still looped over her arm, and she was holding up a flash drive. "Silas," she said, her voice calm and matter-of-fact, pointing to the laptop tucked under her arm. "I have the evidence. This drive contains the complete financial records. Vex, Joffrey, all of them. It's all here." Silas didn't move. His massive golden eyes stared at her. His jaws, which had been inches from closing around a vampire's throat, slowly relaxed. Harper looked down at the assassin beneath her foot, then up at Silas. "The team leader confirmed it. They were sent by the board. They wanted to kidnap me, break the bond, and then kill me. I got the confession, and the flash drive, and I took out the first wave myself." She smiled. It was a small, satisfied smile. The smile of a woman who had just completed a very difficult filing project ahead of schedule. "Does securing evidence count as billable overtime?" she asked. "Because I think I deserve a loophole on the hazard pay for this one. 5 assassins means 5 separate hostile entities. I'm billing you per head. That's at least $2.5 million in bonuses." Silas's massive form began to shift. It was a fluid, almost graceful process. The fur receding, the bones reshaping, the massive frame shrinking down to his human proportions. In seconds, he was standing in the middle of the ruined hall, shirtless and covered in a thin sheen of sweat, his golden eyes still blazing with residual alpha power. He looked at Harper, then at the assassin beneath her foot, then at the flash drive in her hand. "You took down 5 assassins," he said slowly, his voice still rough with the residual growl of his wolf. "With a lamp, and a fire extinguisher, and pepper spray. Don't forget the pepper spray. It was very effective." Harper stepped off the assassin's back and dusted off her hands. "The shifter ones had sensitive noses. I guessed that would be the case. It's a documented physiological trait." Silas closed his eyes. He took a slow, deliberate breath. When he opened them again, the fire had cooled to something more manageable. "You could have died," he said. "I was on the other side of the estate. It would have taken me 3 minutes to get here. 3 minutes is an eternity in a fight." "You're right." Harper walked toward him, holding up the flash drive. "I could have died, but I didn't, because I'm resourceful, and I'm paying attention. And I've been preparing for a hostile takeover since I was 10 years old and had to negotiate with a school nurse about insulin storage." Silas stared at her. 10 years old. "I was a very determined child. I learned early that no one was going to fight for me, so I had to fight for myself." Harper pressed the flash drive into his chest. "Here, the evidence. All of it. Embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy to commit assassination. This is going to bring the entire board down." Silas took the flash drive. His fingers closed around it, but his eyes never left her face. "You could have run. You could have hidden. You could have waited for me. I could have. But then I would have lost the flash drive, and the confession, and the opportunity to bill you for overtime." Harper's smile widened. "I'm not going to let a little thing like a supernatural assassination squad get between me and my benefits package." Silas laughed. It was a broken, disbelieving sound, half laugh and half sob. He reached out and pulled her into a crushing embrace, his arms wrapping around her so tightly that she could feel his heart pounding against her cheek. "Don't ever do that again," he murmured into her hair. "Don't ever put yourself in danger like that. I'm not going to promise that." Harper's voice was muffled against his chest. "I'm a very valuable asset. I have a lot to offer. If the board wants me dead, they're going to have to work for it." Silas pulled back, his hands still on her shoulders. His golden eyes were blazing again, but this time it was something else. Warmth, admiration, a fierce protectiveness that made her breath catch. "You're impossible," he said. "You're utterly, completely impossible." "I'm a delight. You said so yourself." Harper patted his chest. "Now, are we going to stand here all night? Or are we going to call the council and get these people arrested?" Silas's lips curved into a slow smile. "We're calling the council. And then we're going to have a very long conversation about your newfound talent for assassination prevention." "Good. I want it added to my job description. And I want a raise." "Of course you do." Silas pulled out his phone and began making calls. Within minutes, the estate was swarming with council enforcers, tall, grim-faced supernatural beings in tailored suits who took the assassins into custody with clinical efficiency. The vampire was still coughing up fire extinguisher foam. The shifters were still rubbing their eyes. The human mercenaries had been rounded up by the estate security team, who had finally caught up to the chaos. Harper sat on the edge of the ruined gallery, watching the cleanup. Her heels were off. Her spreadsheet was safely stored. Her clutch purse was tucked under her arm. Silas joined her, sitting down on the marble beside her. He had pulled on a shirt, but it was unbuttoned, revealing the chiseled planes of his chest. 3.5 million, he said. Harper turned to him. Excuse me? Hazard pay. 5 assassins. I'll concede your per-head argument. Plus the overtime. Plus the emotional distress of having to fight for your life while I was on the other side of the estate. Silas's voice was calm, amused. I've already authorized the transfer. It'll be in your account by morning. Harper stared at him. Just like that? Just like that. He leaned back on his hands, his golden eyes fixed on the shattered skylights. You earned it. You earned every penny. You took down 5 armed assassins with a lamp and a fire extinguisher. You secured the evidence that's going to dismantle the most corrupt board in supernatural corporate history. And you did it without screaming or crying or waiting for rescue. Harper was silent for a moment. Then she reached into her clutch purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I added a line item for the pepper spray, she said. It was a personal expense. I want reimbursement. Silas laughed. He laughed so hard that the council enforcers turned to stare. He laughed until his eyes watered and his sides ached. I'm surrounded by paperwork, he said, wiping his eyes. I'm the most powerful alpha in the world, and I'm being extorted by a human archivist who just won a fight with a lamp. Don't forget the fire extinguisher. Harper unfolded the paper and handed it to him. Sign here. Silas took the paper. He read the itemized list. Base pay, hazard bonuses, emotional distress, pepper spray reimbursement, quiche compensation, foot pain surcharge, and a new line item for surviving a supernatural assassination attempt. He signed it without hesitation. Done, he said, handing it back. Harper folded the paper and tucked it into her purse. Good. Now, about the bond? The bond stays. Silas's voice was firm, but his eyes were warm. At least until the board is fully dismantled. And that's going to take longer than 9 months, now that we have the evidence. Harper's mouth dropped open. You're extending the contract? Without consulting me? I'm consulting you now. We need to revise the terms. The board is more dangerous than we thought. The assassination attempt proves it. Silas turned to face her fully. I need you, Harper. I need you at my side. Your mind, your skills, your ruthless dedication to spreadsheets and paperwork. You're the only weapon I have that the board can't predict. Harper opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She started. I have a spreadsheet for that, too. Of course you do. I'll need to update the benefits package, the hazard pay, the overtime. The emotional distress premium is going to go up. Silas smiled. It was a genuine smile, open and unguarded. Update away. I'll sign whatever you put in front of me. Harper stared at him. For the first time since she had grabbed his sleeve in the lobby, she was speechless. Okay, she said finally. Fine. Revised contract. But I want a clause about the pepper spray. It's a personal item. I need to be reimbursed at market rate. Silas nodded solemnly. Of course, at market rate. And I want a second lamp, in case the first one gets confiscated as evidence. Consider it done. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the council enforcers load the assassins into armored vans. The shattered glass sparkled on the marble floor like scattered diamonds. I was scared, Harper said quietly. When they dropped through the skylights, I was terrified. Silas's hand found hers, his fingers intertwined with hers, warm and steady. You didn't show it, he said. You never show it. That's the trick. Never let them see you flinch. It's the only way to survive. Harper squeezed his hand. But I'm glad you came, even if you were 3 minutes late. I was not late. I was fashionably delayed. Sure you were. Harper leaned against his shoulder. Now tell me about the council. I have questions about their jurisdiction over financial crimes. I might need to file a brief." Silas laughed again. The sound echoed through the ruined gallery, warm and full of joy. "Harper," he said, "you are the most extraordinary person I have ever met." "I know." She closed her eyes. "Now stop talking. I'm billing you for emotional labor." He didn't stop talking. He kept telling her about the council, the procedures, the protocols for supernatural corporate misconduct. Harper listened, her head resting against his shoulder, the ring on her finger pulsing gently in time with her heartbeat. She was exhausted. She was terrified. And she was going to have to update her spreadsheet. But for the first time in her life, she didn't mind the paperwork. The heavy, exhausted thud of Silas dropping a massive pile of legally binding corporate documents onto the mahogany desk sent a cloud of dust motes spiraling through the afternoon sunlight. The stack landed with a sound like a small avalanche, pages sliding and settling into a precarious tower of bureaucratic finality. Harper looked up from her calculator. She had been tallying her final expenses, running the numbers one last time, making sure every penny was accounted for. The spreadsheet on her laptop was a masterpiece of forensic accounting. Every line item cross-referenced, every decimal point triple-checked. The corruption ring was destroyed. The board was in custody. Vex, Joffrey, and their co-conspirators were facing centuries of supernatural prison time, their assets frozen, their empires crumbled to dust. The council had declared the case closed, the threat neutralized, the crown secure. And Harper's contract was officially over. She closed the laptop with a soft click. She had expected this moment to feel different, lighter, freer. She had spent 9 months planning her exit, calculating her savings, mapping out her next career move. She had a job offer from a rival corporation, a new insurance policy already in the works, and a small but comfortable nest egg that would keep her alive for at least 2 years without working. But the ring on her finger still pulsed with that soft, rhythmic light. And the man standing across the desk from her was still the most infuriating, attractive, impossible creature she had ever met. "Final paperwork," Silas said, his voice flat and professional. "I need your signature on the termination clause. The bond dissolution will be processed by the council's legal division within 48 hours. Harper nodded. She reached for the stack of documents, her fingers brushing against the crisp paper. "I've prepared my final invoice. It's itemized. Every expense, every hazard bonus, every emotional distress charge. You'll find it comprehensive." Silas's golden eyes flickered. "I'm sure I will." There was a pause. The office was silent except for the distant hum of the city beyond the windows. Harper's hand hovered over the documents. She was about to sign away the most chaotic, terrifying, exhilarating 9 months of her life. She looked up at Silas. His expression was unreadable, a mask of corporate composure. But she had spent 9 months studying his micro-expressions. She knew the tension in his jaw, the slight flare of his nostrils when he was holding something back. "Silas," she said carefully, "is there something else I should know before I sign?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thinner stack of papers. He set them on top of the termination clause, his hand lingering for a moment. "These are the documents you've been waiting for," he said. "Your final paycheck, your separation package, the official end of our arrangement." Harper's heart stuttered. She had been waiting for this. She had been planning for this. But hearing him say it, seeing the papers in front of her, made something twist painfully in her chest. "Good," she said, her voice steady despite the ache. "I'll review them and get back to you." "Harper." Silas's voice was soft. "Look at the documents." She looked. The top page wasn't a paycheck. It wasn't a separation agreement. It was a full transfer of assets. A document that legally transferred ownership of Apex Vanguard Corp., the estate, the syndicate, and everything Silas owned, directly into her name. The numbers at the bottom made her calculator look like a child's toy. Beneath that was a marriage certificate. A real one, legally binding in both human and supernatural courts, signed by the council's highest authority, already notarized, already witnessed, and beneath that, a handwritten note. There is no more script, Harper. I'm offering you the empire, my wealth, and my life. The ring was never fake. The bond was never fake. The only thing that was fake was my pretense that I could let you walk away. Harper stared at the papers. Her brain, usually so quick and analytical, had ground to a complete halt. She read the words 3 times. 4 times. Each time, they said the same thing. "Silas," she whispered, "what is this?" He moved around the desk, his movements slow and deliberate. He lowered himself to one knee in front of her chair, his golden eyes burning with an intensity that made her breath catch. "This is the truth," he said. "The whole truth. The part I've been hiding since the moment you shoved that $20 bill into my chest." Harper's hand flew to the ring. "You said it was a prop. You said it was for the contract." "I lied. The ring was never a prop. It chose you the moment I put it on your finger. The bond is real, Harper. It's been real from the beginning." Her heart was pounding now, a frantic rhythm against her ribs. But the termination clause, the 9 months, a formality, a test. Silas's voice was raw, stripped of all pretense. "I needed to know if you were just in it for the money, if you were just surviving until the contract ended. And you were. You are. But I also watched you risk your life for this, for me. You fought assassins. You destroyed a corrupt board. You billed me for emotional distress and quiche compensation like it was the most natural thing in the world." Harper's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. "You're proposing to me with paperwork. I'm proposing to you with everything I have." Silas reached up and took her hand, the one with the ring, his fingers warm against hers. "I'm not the cold AlphaKing anymore, Harper, not with you. You broke through every wall I built, and you did it with a spreadsheet and a fire extinguisher. You're the only person in the world who has ever made me feel like I wasn't in control. And I loved every second of it." She stared at him. The man who had terrified vampires with a glance. The man who had torn through oak doors to save her. The man who had signed her expense reports without question and laughed at her relentless demands for hazard pay. "You're insane," she said. "You're completely, utterly insane." "Probably." Silas's lips curved into that familiar, dangerous smile. "But you're still calculating the value of my assets, aren't you? I can see the numbers moving behind your eyes." Harper blinked. He was right. She had already mentally tallied the asset transfer, cross-referenced it with her own savings, calculated the compound interest. It was a reflex. It was survival instinct. It was the part of her that had been fighting for every penny since she was 10 years old. "It's a lot of zeros," she admitted. 8 figures. 9, if you factor in the supernatural properties. Silas's smile widened. "And you get full benefits, comprehensive insurance, unlimited therapy. I'll even throw in a personal assistant to handle the paperwork." Harper laughed. It was a broken sound, half sob and half relief. "You're bribing me with a personal assistant. I'm bribing you with forever. The assistant is just a bonus." She looked down at the documents again. The marriage certificate, the asset transfer, the handwritten note that had made her chest ache with a feeling she had been suppressing for 9 months. "Silas," she said slowly, "I need you to understand something. I've spent my whole life preparing for the worst-case scenario. I've never had anyone to rely on. I've never had anyone who stayed. If I sign this, if I do this, I'm going to be the most paranoid, suspicious, budget-obsessed wife in the history of supernatural unions. I know. I'm going to audit your expenses. Every month. Every quarter. I'm going to find every inefficiency and demand an explanation. I expect nothing less. I'm going to bill you for emotional distress on our honeymoon. Every time you smile too much, I'm going to add a surcharge." Silas laughed. It was the warm, genuine laugh that she had come to treasure. the one that made his golden eyes crinkle at the corners. Then I'll smile constantly. I'll bankrupt myself with joy. Harper looked at the ring on her finger. It pulsed with a steady, reassuring light, like a heartbeat that wasn't her own but was somehow inextricably linked to hers. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Yes. I'll marry you. But I'm keeping the paperwork. All of it. I want copies in triplicate." Silas rose from his knee, pulling her to her feet. His hands framed her face, tilting it up toward him, his golden eyes blazing with a warmth that made her knees weak. "I love your spreadsheets," he said. "I love your I love your obsessive auditing. I love the way you calculate hazard pay in the middle of a fight. I love that you bill me for quiche." "Shut up," Harper said, her voice thick. "Just shut up and kiss me." Silas pulled her across the desk. The papers scattered. Termination clauses, asset transfers, marriage certificates, final invoices, all of it flying across the mahogany surface in a blizzard of bureaucratic confetti. Harper didn't care. She was too busy being kissed, thoroughly and completely, by a man who had started as a gig worker and ended as the love of her life. His lips were warm, firm, demanding. His hands were in her hair, tilting her head back, deepening the kiss until she forgot about the paperwork, the money, the insurance. For one perfect moment, there was nothing but the two of them, the scent of ink and ozone, and the steady pulse of the ring on her finger. When they finally broke apart, Harper was breathless. Her hair was a mess. Her lipstick was smeared. She was standing on top of a pile of very expensive legal documents, and she had never been happier. "I'm still auditing your expenses," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "I'm going to find something. I always do." Silas's laugh was a warm rumble against her cheek. "I'm counting on it." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like a fortress. Harper buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of pine and ozone. The ring on her finger pulsed in time with her heartbeat. "This is insane," she murmured. "This is completely insane." "It's the most sane thing I've ever done," Silas replied. "You're the most sane thing I've ever done." Harper laughed. It was a genuine laugh, the kind that bubbled up from somewhere deep and unguarded. "Don't get sappy on me," she warned. "I'll add a surcharge for excessive sentimentality." "I'll pay it." Silas kissed the top of her head. "I'll pay everything." They stood in the middle of the destroyed paperwork, surrounded by the ruins of the fake contract and the birth of something real. The sun was setting outside the windows, painting the office in shades of gold and amber, casting long shadows across the scattered documents. Harper pulled back, looking up at him with fierce, bright eyes. "One more thing. Anything. The wedding. I'm planning it. I'm using a spreadsheet. I'm going to keep a running tally of every expense. And if you complain about the flowers, I'm billing you double." Silas's smile was radiant, unguarded, utterly smitten. "I wouldn't dream of complaining. I'm going to be the most agreeable groom in supernatural history." "You'd better be." Harper poked his chest. "Because I've already calculated the cost of a divorce, and I'm not afraid to use it." "I know." He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "That's why I love you." Harper's breath caught. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and beautiful. "You love me," she repeated. "More than spreadsheets," Silas said solemnly. "More than hazard pay. More than my own empire. That's a lot. It's everything." Harper looked at him, the man who had started as a cold-eyed stranger in a trench coat and ended as the beating heart of her chaotic, terrifying, wonderful new life. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Love. I can work with that. But I'm still going to need to see the prenup." Silas laughed again, pulling her into another kiss. The papers lay scattered on the floor, forgotten and irrelevant. The contract was over. The arrangement was done. And the real work was just beginning. Sometimes the best way to survive a corporate conspiracy is to accidentally hire a supreme AlphaKing with your lunch money. If you loved watching this pragmatic archivist turn a terrifying werewolf king into her biggest investor, make sure to like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, if you had $20 to hire a fake partner to save your job, what would your script say?